ISD.cc?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so we went through a 526 on her end.
Okay. I haven't got it yet.
Is it D?
No, it's just D Versace.
VERSACE.
Okay.
Yep, she is going to resend it here momentarily. All right, Don, we're ready to start recording when you are.
Okay, it is recording.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Academic and Extracurricular Committee of the Indiana Area School District. Welcome to all of our guests. It's nice to see everybody here. And of course, welcome to our committee and administrators. We are going to move things around a little bit on the agenda. We have our junior high Stuco visitor with us today, so if you'd like to join us at the table, we'd like to hear from you first.
Dawn, that is the Lane Wolf presentation.
Have a seat there. Speak up and the microphone can pick you up without any problem.
Okay, sounds good. So after we last spoke, I had a student council team work on interpreting all the data that we had from the last two surveys, and they came up with this presentation right here. Next slide, please.
Oh.
So the top is going to be the first quarter and the bottom is going to be the third quarter. And our first question that we asked is, have you ever seen anyone get bullied? In the first quarter, 69.9% of students said that they had seen others getting bullied. Well, in the second quarter, we had 80.2% of students say they've seen others getting bullied. So as the year goes on, we can expect an increase in the amount of students getting bullied, or that we see getting bullied. But the 10.3% jump is a little larger than expected. Next slide, please. The next question we asked is, have you ever been bullied? At the midpoint, which is the top right here, we had 52% of students say they have never been bullied and 48% say that they have been bullied. At the beginning of the year, we had 41.9% of students say they've been bullied. As the year goes on, we can expect an increase in the amount of students getting bullied, but the percent that we are seeing right here is a little larger than expected. Next slide, please. If you answered yes to the last slide, then you were brought into the breakdowns of bullying. So now we're going to get into that. First question we asked is, have you ever seen anyone be verbally bullied, or have you ever been verbally bullied? And 90.4% of students said that they have been verbally bullied. This occurs in areas with less supervision, such as hallways, locker rooms, cafeterias, etc. This could happen in classrooms, but it's less likely due to a teacher presence. Next slide, please. Have you ever been cyberbullied is the next question that we asked. During the mid-year survey, 38.4% of students said that they have been cyberbullied. Cyberbullying typically occurs through instant messaging, text messages, emails, and social networking sites and forums. The low number of students being cyberbullied is good because it's by far the hardest to control, as it's not happening in school. Next slide, please. Have you ever been physically bullied? Was the next question that we asked. During the mid-year survey, 54.8% of the students said that they had been physically bullied. We can infer that students are getting physically bullied less than they are getting verbally bullied. This occurs in areas where teachers are not present and cameras are not catching it. Next slide, please. So one of the questions that we had was suggestions for students to give. That way we could put the students' suggestions in this slideshow. Here are the student suggestions right up here, and they are set up meetings with the school counselors, not only for the students who are getting bullied, but also for the bullies themselves, as something is driving them to do this. And then stepping up for others who are getting bullied, pull the bad students out of class to reflect on their actions and how they are affecting others. We need to have more hallway monitors, less warnings for those who are getting bullied, and worse punishment, or less warnings for those who are bullying and worse punishment. Next slide, please. And after interpreting the data, interpreting all of the suggestions, Student Council has come up with an action plan, and it is to educate the students on what bullying is, educate the students on punishments, make punishments more severe, and teach students how to defend themselves. We've focused so much on the bullies and trying to get them to stop, and it has not worked out very well for us. So at this point, we want to try to make the victims less susceptible to bullying. Any questions, comments, or comments?
I have a question, Lane. In the, not the cyberbullying or online, but the other one, did you make sure it's within school day? Within the school day?
The verbal?
No, the bullying in general.
No, it's overall.
Overall, like even at home?
Even at home.
On the streets of Indiana,
Correct.
whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
I have a suggestion. Instead of the word punishment, I think I would change that to consequences. Punishment is, it's almost a bullying term. So I would, consequences has the same implication.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any
There's
other?
broader options.
Yes. And this is just the junior high, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then my other question would be, have we ever had like self-defense classes taught? Is that taught anywhere? Okay,
Not to my knowledge.
Like physical self-defense?
yes.
I do have a question for you.
Those are taught independently in Indiana, though. There are
Oh, I know that.
several gyms that do that.
Right, right.
So, and I'm not sure whether the question is better for you or the administration, but Sally asked about if the sample had been stratified. Sorry about that. If the sample had been stratified as to what actually occurred within the four walls of the building or in the playground area or what occurred outside. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to eliminate all bullying.
Sure.
But we have a little more control and there's a little more impact on the students who are the victims if it's within our four walls. So my question is, if this is done again, would it be helpful to stratify the data and separate it out between what happens on school grounds versus what doesn't?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. The PAYS survey that just came out that we were going to share a little update on asks similar questions, and it does stratify by location and type.
Okay.
And the data is very similar to what Lane's study has produced. So it's actually pretty cool that, you know, they mirror each other quite a bit. School is unfortunately still the #1 place that students are bullied. There's some people in the PAYS survey said that they experienced some bullying at home, some online, but it still seems like in the school is still the most frequent place that instances of bullying take place.
Is that more face-to-face physical bullying, verbal bullying, where they're, as opposed to electronic?
I don't know that it differentiates between physical and verbal, but I'm assuming most of it's verbal, because physical altercations we would address, we would notice and address.
Well,
through
well,
disciplinary
through that, though,
procedures.
it's pretty easy for me to
Flick someone
to do something that doesn't rise to the level of the principal.
Yeah.
Okay, where even I can intimidate a 7th grader.
Yeah, I don't think it differentiates on that one.
So sorry, I know I'm not here for this conversation, but
No,
I saw some really
please
nice,
talk. That's what we're here for.
I saw some really nice data. I saw that you have educating the students around educating the students within the school on what to do when they witness bullying to support the child or teen being bullied, and kind of rallying the students around the bullied has also shown some successful results.
That's great. And we have to remember, this was done by the junior high student council.
Correct.
And you pretty much did this independently of teachers telling you what to do. Okay, so it's a great job.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
It is good work.
You remember they brought some data to us a while ago. So, it's great to have this continuity going for us.
You said you tried to work with the bullies and you didn't get anywhere. What do you mean?
As far as like trying to punish bullying, we haven't seen as much decrease. Like last year, we did take surveys and we did interpret the data and we did bring action plans. And a lot of that was as far as punishment with bullying. And we're seeing very similar data even again this year compared to last year, even somewhat higher data than we are compared to last year. And that was after those changes have been implemented. And we were focusing on the bullies rather than the bullied last year. So what we are looking at is more the bullied here.
Yes.
Do you see any difference between the grades?
We didn't, in this survey, we didn't break down the grades, and I can only speak to 8th grade, and I don't see very much bullying in 8th grade. But people don't really bully or like out in the open normally.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice work.
Mr. Heinrich, are we going back on schedule?
Yep, we'll go, if you don't mind, Dr. Reed. Mayor Key is here, Jordan Moran, and I'm sorry. Haley, I'm sorry.
Should we go over here?
You can sit wherever you like.
I'm gonna sit them together over on the far side there.
This is great.
Okay.
Mayor Key is the nation's largest provider of services for students with special needs. They have offices in Latrobe, Greensburg, and
Leechburg, and Mount Pleasant in the area for education services. We have 10 schools across the state, so I was just going to share a little bit about who Amerikey is and what we offer. My name is Jordan. Yeah, you're good. My name is Jordan Moran. I'm the Executive Director of Education at Amerikey, so I oversee our 10 schools in Pennsylvania, from here all the way to Philadelphia, Scranton. We are, and this is Haley Crisfalusi.
Nice to meet you.
She's our Senior Executive Director of Administration for our Children and Family Services Division. So we are the leading nonprofit provider of innovative community-based education in health and human services. Amerikey's been around for over 50 years and employs over 10,000 people in 12 states across the country. Next slide. I don't know if I should use one. Okay. We put our heart and soul into exceptional care. Our core values are really important to us. What I love about Amerikey and what attracted me to Amerikey was the dedication that they have to the individuals that they serve, that we serve. Our Children and Families Division has almost 1,000 employees, and we have 70 sites. Next slide. And you can go on to the next slide. So at Amerikey, we range all the way from prevention to residential and inpatient. We have supportive services, community-based, intensive services. The programs that we wanted to talk to you about today were our community-based service of in-district classrooms, and then also our emotional support and autism support schools, which are considered intensive services. We offer transition programming. Next slide. With education, we specialize therapy, consultation, professional development for school districts, all in the area of emotional support and autistic support. Next slide. We opened our first school in Hermione, Pennsylvania in 2005 due to requests from the parents for specialized school services for their students. As I mentioned, right now we have 10 licensed private academic schools across Pennsylvania. Locally, they're in Leechburg, Greensburg, and Mount Pleasant. We do partner currently with Leechburg School District in Leechburg, who's also part of IU28. We have students at that location from Armstrong, Freeport, Marion Center, and River Valley. that are also part of your intermediate unit. We offer autism and emotional support education, as well as comprehensive transition skills curriculum. And we have a licensed school in Texas as well, and we're looking at expanding our education services in that state. Next slide. We can take students from 5 to 21. As I mentioned, it's a licensed private academic, so we are licensed through the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And we have different models for our autistic support program and our emotional support program. We run like a standard school, but some of our students do have modified schedules as determined by their IEP team. Next slide. Okay. So we take students that districts may not be able to provide support to the students within their current school system. Our goal is always to transition the students back to their home school if it's appropriate for them. That's honestly, for me, one of the most rewarding things is to sit in an IEP meeting where we're able to share with the parent and the school district all the progress that the kids have been made to start a transition plan to take them back to their home school district. Typically, we get students through the referral process. So the LEA will reach out to the director of our school, mention that they have a potential referral. We'll observe the student, look at their information, and then determine if we're an appropriate placement for them. Next slide. We do strive for academic and clinical excellence. We have MTSS within our school, and typically what you would envision as a tier 3 student in the public education system is a tier 1 student for us. So the kids that are the more involved students that need the most support in the public education system are what make up about 80% of our program. And then we tier them higher from there. Our trauma-informed practices are very important to us. We do have a accreditation through Presidium, which is abuse prevention. We use safety care that is an integration of crisis de-escalation as well as ABA and positive practices. We coordinate care through the determinants of health assessment. One thing that's amazing about partnering with a community like Miraki is we have so many different service lines that we're really able to provide that continuum of care for our students. So especially when we have a student in our emotional support program that might need in-home family services, we're able to refer them to other programs within Miraki, our Family First programs, and our other therapy programs to give them that full continuum of care and make those referrals and get them in. Wait lists can be a challenge for a lot of our students, but if they're already partnered with one of our programs, it's easier to get them in quickly. Our autistic support model has 3 types of students. We have emerging learners, developing learners, and established learners. And this has different information about how we categorize those students within our autistic support model. We do center-based learning with our autistic support students. So we focus on academics, play and leisure skills, language, social skills, and daily living and transition. Our emotional support students is designed to support students who have severe mental health needs. So students that are struggling to be maintained with a traditional emotional support classroom are recommended typically to this program. And that is slide 17. Each classroom is structured with a teacher, a bachelor's level behavior interventionist, and a master's level clinical specialist. So that could be an LPC or a licensed social worker. With our emotional support kids, we're striving to reduce external referrals. So to JPO, police, crisis. We have increased screening and collaboration and planning. With our MTSS, we monitor and adjust the level of support for the students. We establish relationships with police and local crisis. And as I mentioned before, that continuum of care within Miraki. So we have IVHS programs, Family First Services, that we're really able to come around the student and provide them with that emotional support that they need.
What is IVHS?
It is in-home behavioral health services. intensive behavioral health services.
Very similar to
Yeah.
wraparound. There's a lot more, but if you remember wraparound back in the day, it's very similar to that type of therapeutic support within the home.
And FBMH?
I think it's family-based.
Family-based mental
Family-based
health.
services. And Family First is an emerging service. It's preventative. And so it's not primarily in this area. If you were going to ask, but there are a lot of areas that are embracing Family First services. If we can always look back if you'd like the list of
I just
them we
needed
have.
to kind of get an understanding of what your alphabet soup meant.
It is alphabet soup for sure.
It is, yes. And then we look at crisis planning and coordination for our kids. A lot of what happens with our emotional support students are crises in the home and at school. And how can we really partner with the families so that the kids get the services that they need and the support that they need. What we are excited about potentially partnering with Indiana School District is in our in-district classrooms. So they provide a level of support within the school district. It helps meet the least restrictive environment and can act as an option before sending those kids actually outside of the school district for placement. Those autistic support classrooms would have classroom aides, a teacher, a behavior analyst, and then our emotional support classrooms would have a licensed professional counselor or social worker, as well as an intervention specialist. We would like to partner potentially with Indiana to offer in-district school classrooms in the next school year. We do have some interest. You know, we learned that Horace Mann may become available in the future, and we have interest in potentially partnering for that school building in the future. And this would be a nice entry point for us to come and start working within the school district, providing services to Indiana and potentially other local school districts, since we already have some established partners with other school districts in your IU, and look at how we can provide services to the district in the future.
So, is that?
That's me, Jordan Burton. So I know that's a lot of information, and in the interest of time, I didn't want to read you, every part of the presentation, but we would like to open it up for questions if anyone has questions about Miraki or about our services.
And so, we've connected Miraki with Strategy Solutions to talk about what this potentially would look like. And what we're talking about here is potentially renting space in the Horace Mann building as early as next year. We have a plan that we can put 6 spaces that they would need for the operation that they want all in the same little corner, so that they are present in the school, but they're also somewhat in their own little section as well. And we can have this ready to go, from what I understand, for the fall.
So we would still have Horace Mann over at Horace Mann. We'd still have 2 classes over there.
Yes.
But there's enough space to squeeze these folks in.
Yes, sir.
Is there any reason not to have them at the junior high in that extra space?
We took them on a tour of the different spaces, and they preferred Horace Mann. So
I'm not arguing with
I wasn't going to talk about it.
Yeah, and if there is
I would
a
mention Ben Franklin, but then the principal will get mad at me. She doesn't have enough room for what she has today. So.
Yeah, if there is a potential long-term for us to partner to be located in Horace Mann would help us, establish ourselves in that area.
Did you say you could reach the whole IU from a location like
Yeah, right now, Leechburg, I believe, is about 50 minutes to an hour from here, but they're in the same IU, and we have 5 partner school districts from there. I believe River Valley would probably be closer to here than Leechburg. River Valley is also sent to my Mount Pleasant location. It's a bit of a distance, but there aren't a lot of options.
You work in Mount Pleasant.
We do. We have an autistic support school there. And so River Valley has sent us students there just because they have trouble finding placements. And that's what it seems to be the general consensus, that a lot of the districts are looking for more out-of-district partners. The current options that you have locally are full the majority of the time. And so when kids need to be placed, there aren't a lot of options for them. And since we do, right now we do lease a space within the Leechburg School District. We have a good relationship with Matt Pock and Mike Glue over at Armstrong, and have been able to really build those community partnerships. And this seemed, we also have Altoona East Freedom, so they're about an hour, and State College, yes.
So this would fill in a hole.
This kind of fills that gap for those districts that were a little too far. We're about an hour from you guys, I think, for Altoona, and about an hour to the Leechburg School. And so this would allow us to fill that gap for those districts that it's really inconvenient for them to go to any of those locations.
So you're looking at 6 classrooms, potentially
four classrooms and 2 extra spaces.
Yeah.
4 classrooms and 2 extra spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And we have those, and you have those identified.
You mean right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, for this coming fall. And so how many students about would each of these classrooms serve at one time?
Right. So we do have to follow special education regulations since we're licensed. So our autistic support classes can have up to 8 kids. Emotional support can have up to 12. At Miraki, we tend to keep AS at 6 or 7 and emotional support at 8 to 10, depending on the needs of the kids. Because like I said, our tier 1 kids are like usually your tier 3 kids. So it's a lot of intense behaviors, a lot of feelings all in one place, that we do keep our class sizes small. And initially we would be looking at, there seems to be a need, especially for emotional support. So it seems like elementary, middle, and potentially high school. So we would look at starting 1 or 2 classrooms in emotional support, 1 or 2 in autistic support, and then using those other spaces for therapy services. We would have an education director overseeing our program and some support staff that would use those extra 2 classrooms.
So you're going to service 25 to 30 students in total between the four classrooms.
Yeah, I would say that would be the maximum.
And that's initially.
And that wouldn't happen. I wouldn't anticipate that in August. We would have to get the word out to partner school districts.
The marketing end of it.
Yeah, and really it is a nice thing for us too. If we're looking to be here long term, it allows us to have a little bit of a ramp up in services instead of initially coming in, purchasing a building or renting a whole building. This is a nice step.
So the bottom line is that those students would certainly alleviate the shortage, but wouldn't necessarily solve the shortage in this area.
Probably not in the next year or 2, but in the long term, if we could have more space. And
I was just thinking about the 6 rooms you're wanting to lease at this point.
Right. And with your current kids still being in there, we wouldn't put high school kids in the building right away. We would look at that elementary middle, because right now they have students.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That age now. So to put like 21-year-old emotional support kids, it wouldn't work. So we did discuss that. We wouldn't want to go higher than 8th grade initially. And then potentially in autistic support, we may be able to, but we would be looking at keeping it within the age range of the kids that are currently there.
Would you be interested in putting a classroom at the high school temporarily?
If the interest was there and that was something that we were able to discuss, I think, once we move forward and get, your blessing to keep going in the process, then we would be able to reach out to other school districts and see, do they have immediate needs that they anticipate having in August? Do they have needs that they anticipate in January? And then start looking at how we build up our program.
I'm going to go ahead and answer that one. They do.
Yeah.
Senior high needs emotional support, severe.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of reasons we like this, right? Number one, obviously, we have a proven provider here with an incredible track record. Number 2, they're going to partner with us in our building, in our spaces, working with us to try to keep our students in our system so they can reintegrate these students back into our system, which is so it's not a life sentence when we send them there, which we really like a lot. Obviously, putting them in, we have the space at Horace Mann, so that seems to be a win-win. If the board approves this and we can move forward, I will invite them to our superintendent advisory committee and they can present all of these opportunities to the other surrounding schools. And I'm sure that will, because we have enough students to give them some business, but we don't have enough students that fit this description to fill all of their classes. Right? We have a few, but we don't have that enough to fill them up. So we would need those partnerships with those other schools to make this viable for them.
Did you say you do have a wait list now at some of your places, or you don't?
We do. Our Mount Pleasant school is currently at capacity with the amount of teachers we have. We're adding another teacher for next year. That building currently has 48 full-time autistic support kids from neighboring districts. Our Leechburg program right now, it has AS and ES. They're at 28 students. We're actually looking for a new building in that area as well because we need to expand there.
You're talking about Mount Pleasant, Westmoreland County.
Yeah.
You have that many students. How large of an area does that cover?
We do, because we get kids there from all the way to Turkey Foot, Brownsville, Uniontown, Greensburg area, like River Valley has had a student there. So it is, school districts really need placements, and we usually will get kids up to an hour and 15 minutes of a van ride each way. So
and that drives me crazy that we put these kids that are struggling into a van.
It's really hard for them.
Certainly our sister districts are having the same problem we are in finding placements that are any placements. So I mean, we're shipping kids way too far. So I certainly personally support exploring this real hard.
Absolutely, and if we can help them make this successful, the other services that they provide, those community-based services, there's a tremendous need for that as well. So if we can help them grow this, this foothold here in Indiana, I think it's going to be a win-win as well. And not only for us, but for all the sister districts around here.
Yeah, that's something we're definitely, if down the road Horseman did become available and we looked at purchasing.
The Horseman's going to become available.
Right.
What we're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the nice thing with your use is that the district could maintain ownership. We could sell it. It'd still be classified as a public school. We don't have a whole bunch of zoning problems, which would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right now, any use we do of it, we run into zoning first thing right out of the gate. So this has a lot of potential, and it has a really good service for our district. Okay, if I can ship a kid 5 minutes, okay, and get him into care as opposed to on a van, that's phenomenal for us.
Do you normally use vans?
The school districts do, yeah. So the districts provide transportation, which is another hardship to the school districts, because to transport kids over an hour away when they require their own van, or they required to only have 1 or 2 kids, they need a van aid, it becomes really costly. And so that's, our partner school districts are typically really excited about that it's very close to where they are at home and not the long transportation. It also leads to more behaviors. Like you mentioned, you're putting kids that are behaviorally challenged, typically on a van for an hour.
With a driver.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
no nurse, no help.
And it's really hard to get van drivers, van aides. So it is nice if we can keep them closer to home.
Yeah. Where'd you find these people?
It was,
I think they came to them.
yeah, actually, Ron Earhart actually introduced us.
Oh, that's cool. I'm certainly in favor of pursuing this at flank speed. And if we can get something set up for this fall, because we're sending kids way too far right now.
Yes, sir.
Jordan, would you mind if we share that PowerPoint with the board members who aren't part of this committee?
Sure.
Could you share it with us?
Yeah, Dominic has it.
Okay.
So yeah, just so it's for internal use with your board.
Tom, can you forward it to me, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And you can send it out.
Rob, can I just add something about the research that we did? This is Jackie from Strategy Solutions, just to put it in context for the board committee members here.
Yes, please, Jackie.
You mind? Hi, I'll turn my camera on, so maybe so you can see me. Hi. So I just want to let all of you know that of the outreach interviews that we did, Marikey is the only one that is an educational provider that is interested in a long-term use of the building. The only other academic interest that we had was from your local career and tech school, and they're only interested in a portion of the building. So right now, Marikey is the lone academic option that has a long-term interest in the entire building use. So I just wanted to kind of give that to context. There is other interest in the building, but it's not for academic purposes. And Merrickey is the only one interested in a long-term potentially option to purchase the space. So I just wanted to share that so you had that little bit of context as you continue to make your decisions.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Thank you guys for coming this way.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing your time.
If anything comes up, if you have other questions, or they have my email address. In my phone number.
The board would make a decision on May 20th.
Okay.
As early as May 20th about this, so I will call you on May 21st.
All right, perfect. Because we might need to hire some teachers.
Right.
We get to work.
Do we have
Right.
Just don't take any of ours.
Right.
I don't think there's anything in writing yet. I mean, you're going to have to send us, can you send us a proposal for them to actually vote on?
I can.
6 spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds wonderful, and I agree that having those children on the bus for that long is a nightmare. Working at Adelphi, knowing that some of these travel routes are kind of rough. I think being a Horace Mann teacher right now at this point, and knowing that we are closing, and knowing that that transition is coming, I think my concern might be how many autistic students or whomever you support would we be looking at housing at Horace Mann next year as it's our last year? I'm just worried about that upsetting
12 to 16.
Yeah, the maximum we would ever be able to do would be 26, but I don't anticipate it starting out that many in just a few months.
It's usually fairly gradual from our experience with prior schools.
Yeah, and even we'll have trouble taking a kid that's placed here and moving them over there right away. So
Yeah, if you have them with if they're with another school or another private academic school right now, they would have to go through their IEP process and meet with their team, and it won't be like in August I have 26 kids showing up there every day. It would definitely be a gradual process.
If anybody's speaking, can they identify themselves
Oh,
first?
I'm so sorry.
I apologize.
I'm with the Med Vets.
Oh, that's who you are.
Yeah.
Okay. I know the name. Okay, well, nice to meet you.
Thank you for reminding us. We have, we're trying that AI thing that's going to, summarize these meetings. Just can't get it to work right yet.
how hard?
Who? You have a new haircut.
You're working with the administration and the principals and the faculty at Horace Mann in order to minimize any negative impacts on those kids, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a high priority.
100%. We actually worked with Mrs. Eisenman, Mr. Cronauer, and I looked at different spaces, and we believe that we could probably fit them on the 3rd floor of Horace Mann, and so they could come up the back steps. And for most of their operations would have very little crossover. I mean, lunch might become a crossover and stuff. We'll have to work out some of those details, but visitors would still have to come through the main entrance through our security protocols. But for arrival and dismissal and those kinds of things, the back steps, they have very little impact on the current operation.
You could actually walk those back steps down and only serve the 3rd floor on an entrance phone. Yeah.
Might be something we look at down there for sure.
No, you can keep them from coming into the building. We only have doors on the 2nd floor. So the 2nd floor could still get out to that staircase.
Understood, yeah.
That could be their main entrance.
Agreed. Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I'd be concerned about that because we only have one set of steps that go the whole way up and down the building. So, and it has a step, yeah, that's the main steps. So that would be a concern to me that we couldn't do that per se.
We can work all that out in buildings.
I would be very concerned.
Oh, you know what? I think administration should work that out.
We will, and we'll bring it to your committee.
I'm the chairman of Buildings and Grounds, and I don't do the work.
But thank you again for having me. Appreciate it. Very excited about this.
Anything else from the audience? Okay, sorry, great. Well, the advantage of the committee is that people get to talk, and so that really works out well because you can get your 2 cents in.
Sue Reed's the chair.
I'm sorry. Yes. Dr. Riggs is the chair, and I'll overstep my bounds.
We're continuing in order.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, our science curriculum.
So today with us, we really do have an unbelievable group of people. Have had the honor to work with them for about 6 full days through the course of this school year to work on our alignment with the new STEEL standards. And our science curriculum has been up as part of our review cycle. And again, I can't say enough about the people that are in this room. I think when I say that they're unbelievable, it's evidenced by just the turnout. Just raise your hand if you're here for the science committee. I think almost all of them.
They don't want to see us do anything wrong.
But really, I can't say enough good things about the people that are in the room. Since we did spend 6 days together, I think 5 or 6 days, full days together, we could legitimately be talking to you all night long till midnight. That's not our our effort and our goal going into this was we're going to provide an overview. We're going to give you a summary of what we've been up to and go at it that way. And if you have questions at the end, then we'll be glad. And I think as we go through the presentation, everyone will get a chance to introduce themselves and what area they teach. So if we just get started. So as you're all familiar with, we talked about a few meetings ago, we have new standards. They are the PA STEEL standards, and that stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Environmental Literacy, and Sustainability. And with the current standards, you'll see that on the left side. With our new standards, you'll see them on the right side, but some highlights from that. The current standards provide separate lists of content students should know and processes that they should be able to do. The new ones, they set performance expectations. So there's a lot more inquiry-based questions. There's a lot more hands-on. There's a lot more involvement of students as opposed to, lists where you get multiple choice questions, that sort of thing. So they're going to students will actually be performing. Some other things that stand out, engineering is a concept that's been enhanced. And then in the current standards, there's no connection to math and ELA standards, whereas in the new standards, there's explicit connections to math and ELA. So there's a lot more integration of standards. There's also a lot more performance-based enhancements. Okay, so next slide, Dom. These standards were based upon the next generation science standards. What's kind of interesting in the state of Pennsylvania is the next gen science standards came out in 2012, and here we are. The new standards in Pennsylvania came out in 2022. So took us a little while to get with it, but now that we're with it, the purpose of these standards really is to improve the lagging achievement levels from the United States in comparison to other schools. That was identified through the nationwide assessments where we're compared versus other countries. And the 3 big components of these new standards are one being practice. The second are the cross-cutting concepts where we're integrating skills that can be incorporated into math and science. And then lastly, the disciplinary core ideas. Next slide, Dawn. There's some changes to the state testing that'll happen. I think Mr. Steve mentioned this at the last meeting. The changes will be, so in 4th grade, students do take the PSSA science. In an 8th grade, and then in 11th grade, they take biology keystone. The things what will be changing is the students will be taking that assessment in 5th grade instead of 4th grade, and it's going to be a field test starting next year. So the scores on this PSSA assessment will not count for us next year, but they're taking questions and they're using those questions for the PSSA that will count in 2026. So that's kind of how that will be rolled out. So I think we are on top of it. I think we've got a good plan. I think and you'll hear from the teachers that are here. I think we've got a good plan. I'm sure that plan will probably adjust throughout the next couple of years until this test is fully in place. And it may even adjust as the test comes out. But I think we have a good plan for right now. Go ahead, Dawn, to the next one. And then, so what we've done so far within our process, we took some time to review the new standards. We have some real experts that are on the team, and I'm sure that you're going to hear from them. Our junior high team we've had a couple different vendors that have come in and they've modeled programs. We've piloted a few programs. The junior high has been quite the guinea pig this year with just doing a couple different pilots, just testing out to see what works, what's not working. We also looked at our current program. We looked at the strengths, the weaknesses. We developed a scope and sequence that outlines here's what our curriculum is going to look like from kindergarten through 12th grade in science. So that's kind of where we're at. We met with multiple vendors. We have our teams that are ready we're going to kind of go through at each level, just a brief overview of where we're at. And again, we'll leave it open for some questions from the entire committee. So we'll start off with, go ahead on to the next one. We're going to our kindergarten through 3rd grade folks.
Hi, I'm going to stand here. I'm Robin Kozlowski, for those of you who don't know. I'm representing all of K to 3. I work closely though with 2nd grade. But from kindergarten to 3rd, we looked at what we were currently using, and we were using a range of resources that were different in each grade and also different on each side of the district. We were just kind of piecemealing science together to just embed it into classroom instruction as best as we could. The strengths of all the curriculum that we currently had was it is hands-on. We cannot argue with that. However, it does not meet the new standards, and it is very time-consuming, the curriculum we have, like the FOSS kits and things like that, just to get them out and put all those lessons into practice would take a lot of time that we are devoting to other things like our literacy initiative at this point. So one thing we did find that we all were in agreement that really fit what we're looking for right now was a subscription to Mystery Science. This is directly aligned to our STIL standards. It really takes the basic question and then students are working through that question through their own inquiry and discovery along with the platform itself. So they work through that, and each unit is based on the new STIL standards. So the units will vary, and we do have a crosswalk for what that looks for each grade.
Slide on. Do you need the next slide?
It was on the bottom. It's just a link. If you want to look, you don't really have to.
And the board members do have access. I think everybody has access to the link of the presentation. You can click on that. There's a link for scope and sequence. You can see exactly what they did.
Yeah, and you can see exactly how it's aligning. You can see the time that we will devote to it. One thing we were really hoping was just to embed it and make it work with what we have, what we're available to devote to science, given the fact that we are very structured in our routines in literacy and math as well. So this would fit in very nicely with small group rotations or with our rotation with our PATS lessons. And you could do it 30 minutes a day, or you could take time from 2 days and just double up to make it a 60-minute block to fit through all the lessons. But it also really has students leading all of the discussion. So that's one neat thing. On the following slide, I did pilot, I know as well as 1st grade, one unit from Mystery Science, and we worked through the whole unit this year and got to see really amazing things that the kids produce, but also just their desire to want more science, things like that was really neat to see. So it shows there's definitely a need to keep it going. There are assessments and quizzes that can be given to students. A lot of them though are, what are you observing, or what are your thoughts, or explain this diagram, work through, create your own. So not necessarily recall questions, but higher level thinking questions. And lastly, there are some resources we wanted to keep just for the hands-on component. Each grade selected one creature or insect, I guess you could call, to continue. So kindergarten wanted a plant unit still, 1st grade wanted the mealworm, 2nd grade wanted butterflies, and 3rd grade wanted embryology. So there would be an additional cost for that. But in addition to Mystery Science, it would hit all of our new STIL standards and still give students that hands-on science.
And for everyone's knowledge, because this was on a curriculum cycle review, science was budgeted for, so everything that we're going to be asking for today would really be in the budget already. Yes, which makes
Shirley was getting ready to walk out.
Any questions before I move on to higher grades?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Hello, I am Elizabeth Woods. I am the K-12 Gifted Support Coordinator, and I served on the Science Committee. And I am here with Mrs. Linda Medvitz, and we are going to share information with you regarding 4th and 5th grade. So our core program are FOSS kits. The strengths are that the FOSS kits are hands-on and students' performance outcomes on end-of-year state assessments. The weaknesses are that the FOSS kits do not align with the new STEEL standards and the materials are outdated. We have provided evidence from PVOS that shows 4th grade's performance meeting expectations on the end-of-year state assessment. And the standards, the FOSS kits are not in alignment with the new STEEL standards. Therefore, we were tasked to review some other programs and find something that we think would work well for our students. So how does Inspire Science stack up? Inspire Science is the program that we are recommending. And when our committee reviewed the curricula, Inspire Science stood out due to its alignment with the 4th and 5th grade STEEL standards.
And just real quick, if I could add in for a second. When we looked at, and I know there was a question at the last meeting, I think Mr. Steve asked, the question was, you know, with the new standards that have come out, how are we going to address those standards with only a half a year being devoted to science? And just in our work with the companies that are out there, they do half-year science programs that are aligned to STEEL. And because they understand that most elementary programs are focused in on literacy and math, so they created the program to hit the standards in half a year.
Absolutely, and that is the 3 tracks for implementation reference there that we will share more information on when we get to the next slide. The instructional routines that are a part of Inspire Science are also very strong, and we will expand upon that when we get to the next slide as well. In addition, Inspire Science teacher materials are user-friendly, and the student materials are developmentally appropriate for 4th and 5th grade students. Next slide, please. We also have presented the scope and sequence. It is linked there. So regarding the skills and content, in every Inspire Science lesson, content and skills development leads to the development of student performance expectations. Inspire Science incorporates science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and instructional, my vision is.
I know, I was going to say.
Yeah. Cross-cutting concepts, yeah. So, and then regarding those 3 different models for implementation, there is a full track model that is 45 minutes a day for a full year. There is a flex track A and a flex track B, both that have less time. So flex track A is 30 minutes for 5 days per week, and flex track B is 30 minutes for 3 days per week. Given our current schedule, flex track B would be the track that would work, would integrate most easily with our current schedule.
And that's one of the reasons that we like this one most. When we looked at some of the other ones, they were a full 180 days, and with some of them are like 45 to an hour minute science lessons, and we don't have that time. But this one does accommodate the time that we have for them. It covers all of the standards as well.
The other thing is the lessons are presented with instructional routines, and so this will support the implementation of the program because every lesson includes accessing prior knowledge, engaging, exploring, explaining, elaborating, and evaluating. 3-dimensional assessments, performance-based tasks, open-ended questions, and real-world scenarios and phenomena are highlights of this program and also of the new STEEL standards. The end-of-year science grade average proficient or advanced on the 5th grade PSSA would be what we would be looking for as evidence of effectiveness of the program. Next slide, please. So we looked at the Inspire Science, Amplify, Savvis, and the new FOSS kits. And what we want to review and is the Inspire Science. We shared a link to it, and we would like to conduct a pilot with the merge of Horace Mann and Eisenhower. There could be the possibility of having a science and social studies teacher. We think that this would also potentially be a way to address the scheduling needs for the instructional minutes for other subject areas. And we think that that could potentially be something that would be appropriate when the schools merge. In terms of the community connections, the STEM connections are career exploration, building background knowledge, skills, and content knowledge for the next year's school community. And we would also like to continue the Lunch and Learn program that was established this year by Mr. Joe Perkovich, in which we bring local professionals who work in the STEM field, as well as other careers, into the school. And we provide a Lunch and Learn sessions for our students to sign up for based on their intrinsic motivation. So we would like to continue that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Questions for?
Yeah.
Yes.
The B cycle that you were recommending, did I read that correctly, that it would be 30 minutes for 3 days a week?
Correct. We are currently providing science instruction 2 quarters of the year, and so that is roughly an equivalent, but it could be facilitated for the entire year at that truncated schedule, as opposed to not providing any science instruction quarter 1 and quarter 4.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
No,
That's what we currently do.
Yeah. But it also means that you get science and then you don't get any of that.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, we do science and social studies, 4th grade especially, we do science and social studies at the same time period. So we do social studies the first quarter and the last quarter, and we do science the middle 2 quarters in order to prep for the test.
Right.
And because of the flexibility of Inspire, we can choose the whole track, which doesn't fit into our timetable, or Flex Track A, Flex Track B, which will offer us a little bit more flexibility as to say the time allotment that we have will amount to the same amount of time if we did that. So we wouldn't be doing it 3 days a week. We would do it continually for 5 days, but the time allotment's the same.
Would you consider doing 4th grade at the lower level and 5th grade at a more intensive level?
And that's what this program will offer.
Yeah.
So if we would choose this one, 4th grade, well, actually it would move to 5th grade. 4th grade could do the short version, whereas 5th grade could opt to do the longer version, which is one of the reasons that this.
Run that by again.
If we chose this program, it would allow the 5th grade to not do it just that amount of time, just on the second.
They could have a more intensive. The 5th grade can go 5 days a week
right.
at 45 minutes if that works out, or 3 days or whatever. They wouldn't have to run the same schedule as the 4th grade.
Okay, and so the 3 days a week at 30 minutes that you proposed under this B cycle, the question is really twofold. Number one, and Tom kind of addressed it with his question about the 5th grade, is that a sufficient amount of time, 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, provide them their science? And
the way in which Inspire Science has set it up, it's all of the same content. It's just presented in 3 different scenarios. So you cover all the same content, all the standards. You just do it in these potential different tracks. And 4th grade could be different than 5th grade based upon the schedule. However, our schedules are fairly similar at the grade levels.
At least next year, after that, we can look at different things, but for next year, we're pretty much locked into what we have currently. Right.
Aaron, I understand this coming school year is going to be bizarre, okay?
Thank you.
But once you get to the next, where you're going to open up the new building.
Yes, we would look at.
And they're going to be combined, and part of my hope in supporting that was that you would get certain synergies and certain efficiencies and certain abilities because of the collaboration, cooperation, and the ability to move things around to do some of these things.
I think, yeah, and I think one of the things that has held us back that will be eliminated when the buildings come together is that the specialists are at both buildings and they travel between them. And so that is one of the reasons why the schedule is locked in the way that it is, because the specialists are utilized at both buildings.
Yes, we'd be able to
run
run specials all day now, except for at lunchtime.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to, like, there might be a pod of fourth graders on one set schedule, then there'll be a pod of fourth graders on like another schedule, then there'll be 2 fifth grade schedules. I'll be running maybe 3 to 5 different schedules in that building is how I'm looking at it for the future.
Okay.
To utilize everybody more efficiently.
It's also worth noting too that the CKLA curriculum also has some science content embedded in it. There's if I remember correctly, there's a chemistry lesson in 5th grade, chemistry unit in 5th
And there's
grade.
geology in 5th.
A geology in 4th grade. There's an inventor thing, an inventor unit. So there's some of those principles that they, those cross-cutting topics.
David,
I was just gonna say.
yeah, and David, our STEAM specialist, also takes care of some of these lessons as well. So although it sounds like, oh man, they don't have that much time in science, CKLA, when we did the crosswalk between ELA and science, connected that, and David with his STEAM connected with some of the other things that were missing. So he took care of some of that magnetism, electricity stuff. So
Yeah, that's
it's
what
not
I
that
was
they're
gonna
gonna
ask.
short.
I'm happy to see that the steel standards now do include math and
Yes.
ELA as well. So did you see a
Yes.
nice synergy?
Yes.
Good, good. Yes.
I'd like to lean on you a little bit to make sure that there's a beginning for the robotics that's happening at the junior high.
We have the Lego
Did-
League.
Yeah,
He's done that for 2 years, the Lego League.
and that's moving in.
It's been fully implemented for 2 years. David Sheeran has facilitated the Lego League at Bursman and Eisenhower. And it is an equitably offered enrichment opportunity. And there is a team that is comprised of a heterogeneous group of students at all skill levels. And they participate in a final competition as well. And again, that's taken place for 2 years.
Great.
And the other thing is nice about that is when we move to one building, Mr. Perkovich will be able to assist him with that as well. And that's gonna further integrate our library and our STEAM curriculum with that.
So my other question is, we're going to get a Challenger Learning Center. And that has some potential of being incorporated in at least the 5th grade in some way, shape, or form.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's probably a year or 2 away at this point, but I'd make sure, this scenario is what we're stuck with for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
So we need
Well, and that's why this one seems to fit the model, especially with all the transitions that we're going through right now, because it does offer us flexibility for the next year, 2 years, but then after that, then we can build on that and say, okay, we can do it for this amount of time.
And you're comfortable with the interface between the 3rd and 4th grade transition?
We talk with 3rd grade, some of our stuff will move down. So there's the flexibility that seems to be a flow. When we look at the scope and sequence, there seems to be a nice flow there. So I'm confident.
All right, junior high.
Is it okay if we stand back here? Do you want to
You're good where you're at.
If you're gonna stay back there, you need a microphone. That's the only.
Well, I mean, we're also rolled out.
Come on. We're trying to make sure that the internet hears you.
You can see that our font was made by people in their 40s and above. It's a little bigger for us to be able to see from the background there.
Thank you.
You're here.
Oh, yeah, we should introduce ourselves. Yes. I'm Lisa Adams. I'm one of your newest hires in 7th and 8th grade science. I'm Jillian Fu. I'm half of the 6th grade science team.
Thank you.
Yes. Brooke Bride. I'm life science 6th grade. And we are going to talk to you a little bit about the junior high science program. So in junior high, we do more of a course-based study, which really kind of gets them ready for high school, because once you hit there, it's not integrated. It's like in 9th grade you have this science, and 10th grade you have that science. So next slide, please. I'm also not going to read these all for you because 1, I can barely see them, and 2, you can read. Yes. But with the current
with the current setup that we have now, we kind of looked at our strengths and weaknesses, and coming in, you know, Paul, I don't know if you want to say more. I'm a newbie to what we walked into, and I was able to kind of twist some arms to try some new things. I was on sabbatical in my previous place of employment, and I've spent probably the last 4 years working with the new standards that came about. So I was excited that they were going to let us try to kind of jump right in with looking at some of the new standards and teaching that way. And Mr. McHugh was very willing to try that experimental change. So,
I think one of the things that was a strength, I'll talk about our program, is that we've really aligned what we've done. One of our biggest goals was to implement this curriculum, and it didn't matter on what side of the hallway you were on or what teacher you had, you were getting the same things. So that started probably a decade ago, and we built upon that. So we use common assessments, we use common calendars, we try to use common lessons to the best that we can, except when we have to share materials, we might be a day off here or there. So that's one of the biggest advantages of the current curriculum that we have. One of the biggest challenges is we're kind of flipping that upside down with the new standards, because we were very content driven, you know, and kind of that learning science facts and being able to use those. And now, if you think of it like a triangle, we would build that base to get to a phenomena. Now in the new standards, it's kind of flipped upside down. So to give you an example, in a meteorology unit, we would build to weather phenomena. How does lightning happen? Tornadoes, hurricanes. Now we're going to start with one of those things. We're going to start with one of those phenomena according to the new standards, and that's going to be broken down into the pieces to form that base from the top down. So that's just a big difference as to why we need to change the curriculum that we're teaching to meet these new standards. We don't plan to change the concept of the common assessments, common sciences, depending on what room you're in. That we intend to keep.
So we've worked a lot this year. We've piloted, we officially piloted Amplify and also Carolina Science. And then we started the year actually with a free open educational resource, which was Open SciEd. So we'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. But basically, if you see there that our curriculum hasn't been revised in about 12 years based on everything we kind of looked through and found in old binders and files. So having these new standards really is kind of it was a great opportunity to bring all of these things together. So basically with, if you look there, we're looking at the proposed curriculum aligns to the new skills. So we're looking at taking the open educational resource materials, and they have been kind of packaged very nicely into a digital portal by the Carolina Science company, which makes using them a lot easier for the teacher. But they are very, like Mr. McHugh said, very phenomena based. So we're starting with this big idea, and then through students asking questions, and it's very student driven where we take their questions and kind of steer them along that path. The content is largely the same, although I'd say they took the standards of old days that were here and they've kind of chopped that down a little bit, and it's a little more focused toward very specific topics. And then there's also some very specific Pennsylvania environmental literacy standards and sustainability that are part of it as well. Next slide, please. We also have our scope and sequence there. Some of the skills and things that we're looking at is the science and engineering practices that Justin was talking about earlier. The kids are doing a lot more science, and we've worked really hard this year to give them that opportunity just to get out there. And they're learning by kind of designing their own experiments. They take a question, they figure out how they can answer it. So it's really given them the opportunity to learn about content, but through a discovery process where they're testing and they're looking at different variables and identifying ways that they can solve those problems.
But I would also say through that, there's still rigorous like vocabulary and things of that nature. It's just interwoven into these phenomena-based like application skill lessons.
And I think one of the hardest parts has actually been the assessment piece. So if you look at that last part, A lot of the resources that are out there right now they're still making the assessments. It's kind of like driving the plane while you're building it, or whatever that analogy is. There's not a lot out there for assessments just yet. So we're using a lot of the assessments that we've used in the past because our kids are still taking the current PSSA and then they're going to transfer to the new one. So we're trying to use a little bit of that and dabble in some of the three-dimensional assessments, which are a lot like Robin had said, where you're asking, like, what are your observations? What are you seeing? How would you change this?
And what we do is kind of take what we call summaries or week ending objectives. So I think of it more as a formative assessment. So we take the week's objectives and we give them, if you think, traditional quiz, but they're allowed to use their resources. They're allowed to use their notes. They're allowed to use anything we've done that week. They go back, they revisit the objectives of the week. They get a score. They're allowed to go back, look up the answers, consult with the teacher, consult with their peers, and everybody gets to retake that. So that's why it's kind of like a hybrid of a formative and summative assessment. So, and that helps us build our assessments of, should we move on? What do we need to revisit based on also what those students have in addition to whatever assessments are coming with.
And another positive when we talk about, this new curriculum, these new standards, we're exposing them to a lot more open-ended questioning with our assessments, which is, now I used to teach ELA, so that to me, I was like, yeah, this is like great. But our team works so well together that we will, make sure that we have a consistent way that we're looking at these open-ended, that we kind of have a formula for what we're looking for and how to assess it. But I'm pretty excited about that aspect coming into it.
Makes one of us.
It's just me. I'll be happy enough for all of us.
I will say, I wasn't involved in some of the planning, but I just happened to attend a recent, we all attended the recent event in Harrisburg where they talked about the online testing that is mandated in 2026. And they talked about those technology enhanced questions will be drag and drop and will be multiple selections that are correct, which gives a lot of people hope, but also gives a lot of people anxiety, because how do you prepare for something that we don't know what's coming? Good news. Right after that, I had a meeting with the folks at Lincoln. Lincoln, New Jersey has been using technology enhanced questions for some time. So they are going to release the New Jersey benchmarks basically to us for our use at no additional charge, so that we can then possibly explore those benchmarks and those tests to see if they will help us prepare for those tests down the road.
And we use this starting about 4 weeks ago in preparation for the last 2 weeks of PSSAs, where Lincoln actually has the released items, which we used to scramble to put together and make copies and grade them ourselves and go over it. Now, with Lincoln being the software warehouse, it kind of looks like to the kids what they were seeing in the digital PSSA. It gives me as a teacher the ability to go in and grade the open-ended, and then based on that year's rankings, it'll give the students and us a score of below basic, proficient, advanced, as if they took that short little snapshot. It's not a full length, but it's something we can do in a class period where if I can get them graded quick enough the next day, we can go back and, hey, this is what you would have scored if you took it this year.
Next slide, please. Next slide.
Next slide.
So these are some of the resources and things that we have used. And the first one, gosh, I feel like I'm at a vision test. It's the Carolina. That's the Carolina product. That's the Merlot. Thank you so much. I just couldn't see that. I saw the big CK 12 at the bottom. Yeah, thank you. I didn't bring my cheaters. It was the Carolina product. And actually, I attended the PA Steels vendor program that they had in April that the IU put on. And I met the representative from this company, and we were talking a little bit, and he's like, yeah, you know how the open SciEd stuff's like all over in a million folders? I'm like, yes. And he goes, and it's really hard to read because of the small font. I'm like, yes. He goes, well, we took all of that and we made it, we put it into these notebooks and we made the font bigger. And so we ended up talking to him, and he sent us a pilot, and basically they have an amazing digital platform, which the kids could use or the kids don't have to use. I personally don't love the kids on the computer all the time. So we kind of agreed that we really just want the teacher piece and not the student online piece of that. But they also give you a teacher's manual, which I like on paper, like it's 1985, and you can open it and I can like almost read it without my cheaters. So they did take font that was like this big that OpenSciEd had on the internet, and they made it like for what I would say the average 40 and over person could read pretty easily. CK12 will continue to use, we've used a lot this year. That's again another one of those free educational resources, an online textbook. And then we also obviously have like a lot of teacher created lessons that we have used down the line as well. So we'll kind of mix all of those things together. The one being the cost, of course, would be that first one with the Carolina Science that we decided that we really like the way it's laid out, very teacher friendly, very time saving, and they send you kits. So in the beginning of the year, when we were running all over town trying to find like bath bombs and weird ingredients, it'll all just come in this beautiful little box that you open and it's all in there. So we look forward hopefully to that.
It's a little better than the shopping list you gave me.
Yes, and Michelle Hill won't want to like kill me because I'm like, I messed up the purchase order again. Because I still don't know.
No, we do need to clarify something too. With the OpenSciEd, we said it was free, and it is.
It is,
But that
yes.
comes with zero materials.
Correct.
There is a cost to that.
There is a cost, but it's on you to figure out how to go and to get all of the things, which I have to say I probably we weren't doing the best job of because I was constantly running and trying to find things in a room we hadn't taught out of, and so that was interesting. But we did, we made it work. We made it like teachers always do. But they package everything in a pretty box, and it just comes that way, which is really nice. So thank you for that. Next slide, please. Does anyone else?
No, I love the sound of your voice. We just talked about, the fact that a lot of the phenomena-based and this like real-world application naturally flows into career exploration for our students. So so we're in life science, which means we talk about parts of the cell. Don't worry, we're still going to talk about the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. That will never die. But we have more of a focus of cells and systems through the medical field. So the first phenomenon, and that might even be the next slide, I might be getting ahead of myself, but I swear we only have one more, I think. Yeah, so the first phenomena is this idea that like you're going to the doctor, you have potentially a broken bone. What does that mean for your body? What is happening within your body that has to do with repair? And then through that phenomena is when we start exploring cells and cell division and what that means for different types of cells. And then we still talk about parts of the cell, but maybe not necessarily in the form of a 3D model that the kids make at home. I'm so sorry. I mean, you can still do it if you feel really passionate. I have to get that styrofoam ball from Michael's. But yeah, so these phenomena-based lessons just lend themselves naturally to real-world applications, which then we can make connections to our community right here.
Next slide, please. That was where you were going with that.
So here's one of the, this is for, again, cells and systems, and we would actually be getting chicken wings and having them take a look at ligaments and muscles and things like that and getting their, I'm sure we'll put gloves on them, maybe. But really digging into this kind of stuff. It's very hands-on. I'm really excited for it, to be honest with you. But this is kind of like the setup of what it looks like in Carolina Science. So it gives you a phenomena, it sets out a table, it organizes the information. It's very user-friendly, which we really liked about it.
You did put in for a science refrigerator, right?
And wing cells are gonna plummet 4 years from now across.
How that That's an observation.
And I've taught this lesson actually with adults when I've done professional development, and you'd be surprised how many, or maybe you won't, I don't know, how many people don't interact with their food as much anymore, like realizing how much you can really bend and flex an uncooked piece of chicken without ripping the tear. Look at this, doing. So you can imagine what kids who open mac and cheese things, would experience with that. And then related to that's a part of a chicken that makes it fly. And, you have bones that are similar to that in your body. So adults were impressed with this. So I think, kids would definitely be impressed.
Across middle school students, right?
Yes. And just, not lick it and do weird things like that. But you never know. And then I don't know if we have any more slides after that, or if that's the last.
Just ended on chicken wing.
We may have.
No transition.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
Any questions?
Sure.
Is it about the chicken?
So, it appears that you're going to focus mainly on the Carolina science to give you sequence. But what prevents hobby teaching going on with all these options?
There's
Where
no time.
everybody's doing whatever they please.
There's not. Yeah, well, we don't have
With
a
all due
teacher.
respect, that's what we do. That's what you hire, that's our job. So we take a lot of pride in that.
Which is your job?
To teach the curriculum and to do it consistently.
Okay, and
That's part of it.
so what I see here though is less rigor than was presented on the elementary, that you have a lot of options.
For topics, or, I just want to make sure I understand your question.
You have 3 different things you're going to do.
No.
CK,
CK-12 is like a supplemental program that's meant for practicing like vocabulary acquisition. It's not a lesson in of itself. So the Carolina Science is the like day-to-day curriculum lessons that we would map out. That's like the mystery science here, or the inspire
That's kind of the
there.
core of what you'd be doing.
Yes, and what Carolina has done is they took all of Open Science, which Open Science can be taught integrated, where you have all the sciences mixed from 6, 7, 8 and build on each other. There's different ways you can look at the sequencing. Or the way that we have formatted it is in 6, you'll do all the life science pieces, 7 is the physical science, and 8 is your earth and space. And there's actually more there than you can fit into a year. The lessons are based on a 45-minute period. We only have 40 minutes, so we actually have to make some executive decisions and, kind of the how and the where you space things. But there's not really time to do any, if you want to be able to get through the curriculum and get through all the standards, you don't have a lot of time to off-road.
Yeah, and that was also one of the reasons why we created the scope and sequence, was because, if you have that scope and sequence, we know what the standards are. That's that's one thing that we're absolutely positively sure of. We know the standards. And then what they did was they lined up what they teach with those standards. And then they said, okay, based on what we're teaching, here's the standards, here's what we're teaching, here are the materials and resources that we're going to use to get us to that point. And so even though we're not following a vendor, to an absolute T, we are using all of those materials and resources to get to that standard piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and from what I hear though, is that you're making sure that whatever's in your class is in your class.
Absolutely.
And we're not going to have divergent.
No, we teach 7th grade. 7th grade is Mr. Adams and I. That's my husband, and then 8th. Also another new hire, and then Mr. McHugh and I have the 8th grade, and we do the same things. And then Brooke and
no, that's fine. Your Dr. Food do the same thing. We do the same. We have the same Google Classroom posts. We have the same exact assessments. We do not differentiate at all in our classrooms.
How do you interface with robotics people?
I actually had an addendum to your little robotics thing earlier. So the part of the steels are the technology and engineering standards are kind of like packaged in there with science. And if you look into those, there are places for that you could go, crazy enriching kids with that, which is what I think that we could do. And we obviously have what we have going on in the junior high, but I think there's opportunities even outside of that robotics program where we can get pull in some other stuff with robotics. And I can't speak to the elementary because they have like a stacked full house. But I know like my husband did robotics at Homer Center, and he would love to kind of add on to the programs that we're already doing in the junior high for everybody, or enrichment, or however we can kind of get
Fits well with the physical science.
Right, it fits really nice.
So,
what I see in the robotics program in the junior high is a real firm foundation of really interesting things going on, teamwork and engineering.
Absolutely.
And getting kids up to the ICTC and working with materials, things I would have loved to do.
I see that though as the application. That's the application of what we do.
Yeah. So a good conversation between that and your program, the science programs.
I mean, they're nested right in ours, those technology and engineering. And a part of our science standards really are having kids problem solve together. You know, here's your problem, how do you solve this together? And learning to collaborate and to speak publicly and, you know, go to a science circle with your peers and be able to talk about, well, I would do it this way and I would do it that way, and they're both okay, and you can agree to disagree. And the creating and the building and the designing and the modeling and all of those pieces are there.
I was encouraged because one of your statements says you encourage kids to do science as opposed to just read about other people about it. So that's really great.
Thank you so much. We're going to have to move on. I'm looking at time here. High school.
Hi, I'm Jamie Edmonds, and this is.
I'm Mike Lehman.
So I'm not going to take a ton of your time unless you have a lot of questions, but science at the high school is a whole lot different because as you can see, we have 15 different course options. And this, I know we all love like a great mind map and all, but each one of these has a link to the actual specific course if you need to know more about it in terms of what we're looking at. But like he said, we could be here until like midnight or longer going over each individual course, and you don't have time for that, and neither do I. And so basically the main focal point at this point is the yellow biology, because technically biology is the only required high school course that every student must take, whether they're coming in as a 9th grader or whether they're taking it as a regular 10th grader. From there, in order, a graduation requirement is to have 3 science credits, and so they can fulfill those that pathway several different ways. Now, we could go on and I could have way many more arrows on this, depending on how you wanted to go about it. But we tried to keep it as simplistic and clean looking as we could, going with like the main kind of pathway that you take from one class. Now, environmental science is our primary 9th grade course. Unless you accelerate as a 9th grader, you come into biology that way, and then you have to make your credits another way. So you're welcome to look at this and explore further. Dom, next slide for me. What we did was we put together an overview of what like all of the main science needs were in terms of what we had to identify. Now, we started writing curriculum in 2019, 2021, and then we were kind of on a holding pattern because we were waiting to see about the new standards that were coming up and how we were aligning it all the way from kindergarten up through where we are as well. And so these are looking at very specific in terms of, you know, what our teachers need. The majority of our teachers are saying that we have the textbooks that we need that are current now. The AP books have to be in within 10 years. That's an AP College Board guideline. Most of our books are in compliance, except for the AP Chem, which hasn't been offered every single year. So it is out of compliance and would need it updated immediately. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you look at some of this information, we're kind of having an awkward straddle. Our books are pretty good. They are about 5 years old. So, you know, if we're typically looking at a 7-year revision cycle, somewhere in that, you know, we're kind of in that weird spot where, yeah, they're still great books. What we're most concerned about is maintaining our digital presence, like those online resources that we have that I think when we looked at many of them, they were on like a 6-year cycle. So our books are 5 years old. 6 years is coming up at the end of next year for many of our texts. So when you kind of look at that, you see, hey, yeah, the books are good. And when some of our needs that we're describing are maintaining access to a lot of those online resources.
So for the AP Biology, which I can speak to, is the online mastering program. Its renewal is up in 2026. And then the Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2, that uses the online mastering program as well, because that's another program because that's the class I teach. And that renewal was up in 2025. So it's a year sooner for the Anatomy and Physiology. And then Okay.
Oh.
I've been cut off. And I wasn't even talking that long. And so again, like it's different years depending on when that particular textbook was adopted. And then for the physics 1 and 2, they use the online Wiley program.
Yeah, we have a Wiley Plus package.
And so like it's along the same lines. These are resources where our students can go in and utilize, yes, an online textbook, but more importantly, it's like note-taking skills. We also have graphing analysis, questions that we can push out, especially for those AP level courses to give them the test-taking practice that they need in order for their tests.
And some of the software, for instance, for the AP physics courses, it's adaptive. So as the student goes through the material, it'll determine whether they know a topic or not and whether they should move on or whether they should perhaps go back and review more content. And so it'll feed them the content, and it's certainly not smart, but it is programmed in so that it's can determine whether a kid is ready to, kind of move on. So those are things that are built in and reasons like we would like to keep them, especially in these higher level courses where the rigors are so much more. If the student wants to spend more time gaining familiarity with the topic, they can.
I mean, if you go through and you were to look at each individual course, you can see very like course specific topics that are things that need to be covered, like lab equipment and lab materials. And we do a pretty good job at the senior high sharing that amongst the 8.5 teachers we have teaching science. And like we do things like you talk about the chicken wing because like we do that in anatomy. So like if they've seen that in the junior high, we do that again in anatomy when we get to the muscular system in terms of that. We utilize like resources that we have on hand. Mr. Perkovich is at the senior high too and does lunch and learn with us as well. And we get down there and have our students getting in and talking to these different healthcare professionals and doing different things in terms of industry and, kind of reaching out and outreach at that. But like if you were to click through and look at the individual, like we'll say on almost every slide, hey, a strength that we have or something that we utilize is lunch and learn, or these field trips that we like try to get these kids going to the universities to look at the different, like the anatomage tables that are $80,000. Like, you know what I mean? That we can kind of go out and utilize them there because we don't have that resource here in particular. And so we do a very good job as a department trying to find the resources that we need. We have IUP in our backyard, and we work very closely with them. We have kids over in Kopchik, the new Kopchik building already. We had organic chemistry running a lab over there last week. Our science seminar students have been over there on multiple occasions, touring and looking at the different facilities.
Physics has been over there in the last
Physics,
month or so.
We have like a really good connection with the faculty over there that we feel comfortable picking up the phone and being like, hey, what can we do coming up, or how can we integrate this? Dr. Hoven is phenomenal. Dr. Travis works with us very closely, along with lots of other faculty that we have access to. So we're reaching out and utilizing that stuff. So if we don't have maybe the more expensive, organic chemistry equipment, we're taking them over there and being able to utilize that so that our students are experiencing those types of labs and that level of material without us having to go out and buy or purchase like a large subset of equipment, so to speak. And it is really hard too, like I said, because there are, 8 of us, and there are so many different specialties. Like, I mean, just looking at all of the different options that our students have, which we kind of take pride in as well. Being able to offer higher level courses like
and I would say almost all of our courses beyond the environmental and the biology, they're elective. So the students are choosing to take those courses. So we do try to make them attractive, and we do hands-on activities, we do engineering activities in physics where we're building things to reinforce the concepts that we're learning. So as much as we're doing traditional labs where students are doing data collection, data analysis, graphing, reporting and things like that, we're also trying to incorporate some of those engineering skills in what we can do in a science classroom versus our tech ed department. So those guys do a phenomenal job as well. And we do use them as a resource in some cases.
I mean, and trying to offer lots of different opportunities. My anatomy and EP classes last week did live open heart surgery. And so we patched them straight into the operating room of a hospital out in Chicago, Illinois. And they are interacting in real time, live, asking the surgeon's question, and the surgeon sat there and answered questions live to them. And like it was we made it a whole day experience, but my students, like 3 hours worth of watching surgery. And if you had walked in that teeth or blended learning or T3 lab, to see their faces like glued onto the screen, like with like typing in their questions, asking. It was just like, it's something that we do every year. And like, that's just one example of how we're trying to utilize the resources that we have, but bringing in something that is so, I mean, we used to be able to go to HEH and like actually be looking down, but it was limited space. And, you know, since COVID, it's kind of dropped out. Are there any generalized questions? Like, again, if you want to go back to Dom, can you go back a slide?
Before you leave that slide.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
What is the NSTA recommended class size?
The NSTA recommended class size is 24.
And where are we?
We are upwards, most
It
classes,
varies depending on the
depends
course.
on the course.
What's the range?
It's anywhere between 15 and 28 to 30.
Yeah, we've had 30, 32, especially at the beginning of the year.
Especially in
Membership,
environmental
yeah.
science, which is probably the worst science to have 32 in. Like my AP classes are 19 and 23, depending on period.
Yeah, and a lot of the recommendations are based on
a lot of
safety
AP
more than anything else in a science class.
AP Bio.
That's a lot of
And that's just AP Bio. AP Physics, you have AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2.
Yeah, and we those alternate depending on when we teach them. But I mean, I would anticipate next year, based on the numbers that we're seeing, we'll probably have an AP 1 and an AP 2, and we're going to have an AP 1 class that's probably pushing 25. That's a lot of kids in one room, depending on how the schedule shakes out.
Right, that will be another challenge as well, is like the schedule offerings in a singleton like AP Physics 1, where there's only one section of it. If it's in the morning and kids are dual enrolled, then they have to pick. Like there's a choice that needs to be made. And so like sometimes we'll lose a little bit of enrollment in terms of
Requests don't turn into necessarily enrollments, just on schedule.
And it is on kind of like an ebb and flow as well. Like, so like if my senior or my juniors can't get AP this year, they'll try for AP next year, you know, and then sometimes that offsets my anatomy classes. So
Yeah, it's definitely cyclical. You can see it across all the classes. Like we didn't have an AP Chem section this year, but next year we have 15 because you get some pent up demand. And AP Physics 2 is the same way. We didn't have an AP Physics 2 section, but we had 2 sections of AP 1 this year. So you gotta get that ebb and flow.
And you have to look at it too, look at all the different options that they have.
Yeah.
So like they'll sign up for whatever, and then like a lot of times what will happen is like they couldn't get into AP Bio, so they decide to take AP Physics instead, because some of those classes don't have to stack. Do you know what I mean? Like you can take them in a different order.
Yeah,
There are certain things. Go back for me,
Because
Dawn?
if you look at the map, you can see there's very few arrows that lead to another course. Almost all of them can be gotten to, you know, kind of by itself. So biology leads to physics, biology leads to chemistry. You know, when you're making the successive jump, chemistry to AP chemistry, yeah, you have to have that background information, right? But if you look at physics, you know, you can take the regular physics and then you can take 1 or 2 based on what your interest is or what's available. So most of them you can get to, I would say, without having to take a prior course.
Right, and so for example, like in order to take AP biology, you have to have had chemistry. You can have any of the chemistries. You could have had regular chemistry or honors chemistry. But in order to take anatomy and physiology, you don't have to have AP bio, but you have to have chemistry. But you don't have to have physics. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like when you look at it, there's so many different pathways to get your 3 credits. But a lot of our kids, if there are AP kids, they are far exceeding their 3 science credits. They're upwards in like 6.
Their electives are their science.
Do you know what I mean? Like they're taking all of the APs. My kids who are in AP biology, are taking AP chem, or they're all. Some of them are in AP bio and AP physics at the same time.
But I think Dr. Rick's concern is about the safety factor.
Yeah. Oh yes.
The safety factor.
The overpopulated. So when you say 30 or 28, is that 28 on day 1 and 24 on the second month, or is that?
Not typically. So their classes sizes that are 28 and they stay 28. And we do so for example, a lot of the times the environmental science classes might change, but when I had big sections of anatomy maybe 2 years ago, I had 28 or 29 in first period, and I had them all first semester. And then when it switches over into anatomy 2, some of the kids are like, yeah, this maybe not be the best class for me. And so like that, then the number drops a little bit, but maybe I'll have 26 instead, or 24 instead, which is right where I need to be. But that whole first semester, because again, it's an elective. Those kids who are in it want to take it.
But the science rooms are set up to 24.
Correct.
So how do you fit the extra 5 or 6 kids in?
They showed us that.
I think we said earlier, we make it work.
It wasn't the best safety situation in my opinion.
So just as a side note, you mentioned an atomized table.
Yeah.
You know there's going to be one next year up at the ICTC?
Mm-hmm. I did not know that.
Okay. No. It's sitting in a crate right now in the warehouse. And as soon as
at the senior room 208, move it in.
As soon as they've prepared the space for it, it will be installed, I expect, sometime this summer. So you won't have to travel near as far.
Just out of curiosity, I was wondering who put my name in, because I actually got an email and a call today, literally today, from an Atomage rep going, oh, hey, I heard that you were interested. And I was like, okay, wait. And so I was like, all right, like, what do we have? And like, they were sending me information on, I don't know. I don't even remember what it was, but like some kind of COVID relief fund money that is allotted to Indiana account. So like I have to set up a call. I was not able to do it today. I apologize.
So
I know we need to keep
So yeah, Sue, I have one that may be more appropriate for Justin or Rob. When I listened to the presentations, the high school was, as it traditionally has been, as a kind of a course-based curriculum or presentation. But the junior high, the intermediate school, and the primary schools all picked a particular program. And I have no issues with the programs, except that all 3 were different. And so my question is there any kind of because in the past I've seen where maybe 1 grade levels would have a particular program, and then when they got to the next grade levels, they were using a different program, and there was some issues in continuity between the different.
Yeah, I think I can answer that. So the program that the junior high is using is not yet available at any of the other buildings. The open SciEd materials and resources will be released. Lisa, you can correct me. I believe next year for elementary, and then the following year would be released for the high school. So when you look, because of how new these standards are, there's not really an ability to be consistent from elementary to junior to senior high.
And so I guess my question then, the follow-up is then, so if there isn't that consistency, then what are you as the director of education, how are you going to overcome that?
Yeah, so we plan to meet throughout the year for the elementary, for the 4 and 5 folks, and for the K-3 folks, as the open SciEd information is, or the curriculum resources are being used. Where it is released is at the junior high, and there's some evidence that shows that this has been effective. Where it hasn't been released, the high school and the primary grades, we do have plans to continue up with this to keep up with how that program is being implemented at the elementary and secondary levels.
Okay, thank you.
And also, as long they're working more towards standards-based right now than curriculum-based, so as long as they're doing the continuum with the standards, then they're good.
And we
Not
all
as
like
important. You know, it
each
used to
other.
be we would have one curriculum that was
So
8
we
to 12.
kind of talk, like we like each other for the most part. So we like talk and work together. But like Lisa said, the open SciEd, like the Carolina who put it into this more usable form that they like they're releasing little bits and pieces out into the high school world too. And because our chemistry teacher was piloting a program, and all of the folder, like she said, like it is so not user friendly. Trying to kind of look at it from that perspective. But as they're trying to start to sort it into, you know, a more cohesive flow or format, as I guess would be ideal across the board for anybody, right? We're really good at talking and making sure that we're matching up. Like we're really great at, hey, we have these rising 9th graders, and should they be accelerating into biology or should they not be accelerating into biology? And so like we kind of talk with them in terms of that. What are their problems coming up? What are the, you know, what do you see as the main needs? And I know that, you know, we're doing that across the board as a discipline, I think. But it is harder too at the high school because there's just like you see, there's just so many different directions to go, and they're like really specific niches. But I think overall, in terms of the overall cohesiveness, like that's where like we kind of work best in filling in those holes if need be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all science people that are here, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week.
Thank you. And if there aren't any other questions, I'm gonna go get my kid.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and science folks, you guys are welcome to stay. You're welcome to go as well. And we just appreciate you guys for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Melissa Nyberg has been waiting patiently back there.
Yeah.
We should have told Melissa to come much later.
Yeah.
Are we ever even considering getting one of those, and I never pronounce this right, it's some tables like with, she mentioned that there might be some grant money.
Yeah, I mean, we'll write all the grants we can to give them. Absolutely. That problem is a lot of the grants that are available to teachers are too small.
Right.
And a lot of the grants that are for the districts are too big. And it's like finding that sweet spot in between is tough, but if there's a way to figure it out, we'll figure it out. But
it's an $80,000 investment.
Right. But Wade, will you connect with that teacher again with what she was talking about as far as money out there to purchase one of those tables? Thank you. I think we should have one.
All right, ideal course offerings.
What's 80,000?
Hello, I'm Melissa Nyberg. I'm a social studies teacher at the senior high school, and I am the online coursework coordinator for the senior high school and the junior high school. And I have an ironically low-tech presentation considering
That's okay. We're happy with that.
And I have never appeared before the academic committee before, so I apologize. I may be short materials, but
we met you when we took our tour.
You did?
Yeah,
That very briefly, very briefly.
You were busy.
And Melissa, if you're okay, I'll just highlight the need that you brought to me. So with this, the reason why Melissa is here, she had reached out to me, and the issue was that we had an increasing number of senior high students that were completing a portion of their day online, and there's few elective courses that are available for those students. Melissa came to me and said, hey, I'm concerned that, if we get kids that are going to these outside cybers, it could possibly be because of, the electives that we offer. So I think there's some things that we can do through lining up courses with the provider we have, and then I think there's some things that we can do in-house too. So Melissa, without further ado.
Okay, so I'm not sure whether everybody is aware of the size of our online population at the secondary level. I checked the stats today. The high school has 900 students on the nose as of May 6th. 101 of those are full-time online or significantly part-time online students. That means like half their schedule is online classes. And our population sort of blossomed during the pandemic, the 2020-2021 academic year. And a lot of people thought that enrollment in online coursework would subside once the epidemic waned. You are absolutely right. It has.
Unfortunately, it opened the door.
It most certainly did. And our enrollment is being driven currently by everything but pandemic-related considerations. Yeah. And you can see the statistics. I'm not going to do the math for you. Some of you have advanced degrees. I mean, you can use a calculator. You can do the math. We are currently shelling out a lot of money to outside cyber schools. And if you take the 101 students at the senior high school and run the figures, that is a potentially huge outpour of taxpayer dollars from the district. And we, in my personal opinion, need to become more competitive because we do have students who are interested in something beyond what we offer elective-wise at this point. When our program began, we had a relatively small student population who was looking at full-time online instruction. Maybe 25, 30 kids a year. We are now 4 times that. And our offerings have not increased apace with increased enrollment.
The 101 students that you mentioned, these are full-time online, or does it also include students that go to class and take some online courses through Ideal?
No. The 101 figure that I cite, those are students that are either completely online or at least half of their schedule is as an online student. There is a bewildering array of scheduling options at the senior high school. So we have kids who come in, So we have kids who come in for maybe one class in the building but take the rest of their classes online. And so that 101 figure, those are students who are spending 8 periods a day in a classroom and maybe taking 1 online class. I tried to do a quick survey today of the number of, online course seats that are occupied by students who are primarily building students, and the number's about 100. It changes by the week, sometimes by the day, depending upon the time of year. So we're serving a population in addition to the full-time online student. And if you take a look at the elective courses that we currently offer, you'll notice that the list is not very long. And senior high school students need 7.5 elective credits in order to receive a diploma from Indiana Area School District. And when we mention elective courses at the senior high, we often think about like personal growth, personal exploration, career exploration. Some of the courses that we are expecting online students to take as elective courses are really geared toward a more academically advanced clientele. Because, did any of you have to take anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 as an elective in high school just to earn a diploma? And we want to advertise the fact that we offer students the opportunity to earn an Indiana Area School District diploma as fully online students. It's really hard to earn 7.5 elective credits when these are the offerings from which you have to choose. And keep in mind, there are some courses with a little asterisk, for example, astronomy, forensic science, geology, chemistry, physics, psychology, sociology. Those are courses. There is some overlap with required courses, so that cuts into the number even farther. Example, as seniors, you need economics and then psychology, sociology, anthropology, or law and justice. Well, if you take psychology as your required social studies credit, that takes away an elective option for you. And so what it amounts to is, I mean, if we want to be competitive, we need to broaden our offerings. And I tried looking through the Edgenuity course listings. There are some possibilities that we might be able to offer through the existing platform. But where we stand now is, do we have the willingness to allocate the research time and the personnel to exploring the option, or are we going to stay sort of where we're at, knowing that we may lose students to outside cyber platforms?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just add to that. I think my thought with this is we can add some courses through the provider Edgenuity, and I think there are some things that we can do there to just boost the offerings that we have as far as electives are concerned. I think the other part of this is that I don't think that there is any real major cost that's associated. There may be a cost of having teachers create some courses for electives, but I think all we're asking for today is really the board's, I guess, permission for us to look into this further at the options. And then if we are given the permission to look at this, look at what costs might be associated, bring that cost back to you and say, at a future board meeting, we say, approve up to $5,000 of additional coursework or teacher preparation time to build out some additional courses.
Absolutely.
Right. Because I think everybody's goal is to retain students.
Right.
And we want to graduate students who are taking classes they're interested in and prepare them for the workforce.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, when we're thinking of cost, I think while there may be a cost, and my mind goes to, while there may be a cost, as in like if we spend $10,000 in teachers preparing courses and maybe even some additional work. If that $10,000 can save us just one kid from going to an outside cyber, it's worth it. So I think the cost benefit analysis, really is there. It makes sense if we can just save one.
I suspect that the cyber school ideal hasn't gone through the 7-year cycle that we started it, and it's just been running along, and as long as we don't hear anything about it, we don't do anything. So I would certainly like to see this get back on a 7-year cycle at a minimum.
Yeah.
And make sure that it stays updated and interesting and vibrant.
Yeah.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, though, the teachers of record, though, do have the ability to tweak. Like, so if once we update the science curriculum, for example.
Right.
Jamie Edmonds is the online teacher. She can tweak that class and bring it up to.
But I'm talking about an overview of the program itself. Waters never sat down and looked at the ideal program from when he started it 100 years ago.
Right.
So that we do capture more kids, we keep them in the district. We don't spend the $32,000 because every kid that goes to cyber ends up at $32,000.
Yeah.
And rising.
Right.
And if it requires us to do more robust cyber operations, we can't get any cheaper than those.
Yeah, so with your approval, we'll start looking into this and how we can enhance the electives that we have, and then we'll come back to you with whatever cost that might be as a proposal.
Yeah, but to put a little fire into your pot, we need this done now so that we can get.
We have been stagnating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but we need to recruit the kids.
Yes.
We need to save the kids from the fall.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to have this program pretty much by the end of May.
No
problem.
I don't mean to sound alarmist. I just mean, if we want to move into the future, I think we need to be a little more aggressive.
I agree 100%. I'm happy you brought this to our attention. Seriously. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Horchak, because we have explored some other options. Unfortunately, there just aren't any spectacular options out there. Unless you create your own in-house online classes, and that is a cost-intensive venture. So.
Good.
Yeah.
So are there any other school districts that have, like larger school districts that have a bigger selection that where their teachers have developed this that we could buy?
Well, we buy our Edgenuity program through Seneca Valley. Seneca Valley sells, they're like the corner dealer for all of Edgenuity, for all the school districts. So, so they have actually built a pretty robust volume of classes. Some of them fit, some of them don't. So what I think Mr. Zohorchek's saying is the next step is we go through that course catalog, we find what fits and we find what's close, and we pay teachers to come in and make that fit, make adjustments, because you can customize all of those curriculums.
Our teachers.
Our teachers
And our students.
do it for our students.
And then you can line up with the exact programs you have.
Yeah, and you can actually add supplemental material. So it would more closely reflect what's being offered in the classroom.
Absolutely.
And now, are you in the Ideal Lab? That's not full-time, right?
No.
Tell me about your schedule.
I teach social studies 3 periods a day, and I have lunch planning, and then college career and employment readiness period, and then I'm in the Ideal Lab 4 periods a day. It's the coursework for.
And she's outstanding.
I know.
And while we're doing,
we know that.
while we're talking about teacher appreciation, Melissa said she's never spoken to any of you before, but she is one of those under the radar, unsung heroes who puts her heart and soul into her job, and she really just does outstanding work for our kids. So
You actually said that about her, something similar about that when we were on the tour.
yes, ma'am. I mean, she deserves way more credit than I can give her, but she's one of the good guys for sure. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for
thank
considering my beggar's proposal.
No, we agree.
To bring back to you.
Right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Next is the
Moving right along, possible continuation of the summer driver's ed program. Everybody's favorite topic, driver's education. So
Why, what's wrong with it? I don't understand.
it's expensive. That's what
That was expensive.
It's one of my pet peeves. But
Dangerous not to have it.
it's dangerous. Yeah, that's exactly. It's a double-edged sword. So
It's true.
the driver's ed teachers have reached out and indicated they have about 19 students who would be interested in taking the driver's ed course over the summer. With the current model that we have in place, that we did this last year, the current model we have in place with the online learning, it should come in somewhere around $10,000 to provide those 19 students with this opportunity. Now, this is where, since Madam Vice President has left us, I will play her role and say, this is not something we have to do. We can also ask these students to wait till the fall and do it in the fall, since we're offering there, if we offer it next fall, which is, tune in May 15th, because we'll talk about that then. But there are definitely students that want it, and we can provide it as well. So it's up to the board, it's up to this committee to make a recommendation. It's, like I said, it's got both sides. It's a double-edged sword. And Mr. Runge has his hand up. Dr. Runge.
As a parent of one of those 19 students.
Oh.
Expressed an interest.
Okay.
3 years ago, I was at the same meeting begging for the same thing, because our daughters all have late spring birth dates.
Right.
So they get their learner's permit before it's too late for them to enroll during the academic year. 3 years ago, IU 28 offered an online driver's ed course. Our twin daughters took it. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It had inaccurate information, including the maximum speed limit in Pennsylvania being 55. Was the correct answer on one of the quizzes.
Oh, no.
The IU has stopped offering that for very good reasons. There are 2 private IEP's driving instructors they're all fully retired, so there is no more option through IEP.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Believe me, I checked with Lou Pesci about
Right.
this, and they've all retired.
Huh.
So really the only options are 2 private vendors, one of which Lou Pesci absolutely said, do not go to them. So I said, okay, that sounds scary.
We better be careful.
And the other one, we have not investigated further, to be quite honest with you, because we were hoping that Indiana High School would offer it. About waiting until the next year and taking it for some students, primarily ours, her schedule is already full.
Right.
She's academically oriented and wants to, get into dual enrollment classes and so forth. So if she could take this over the summer, that positions her a little bit more nice. I realize that's a bias that I have coming in to say that, but.
But you're one of
I'm happy you
19, right,
spoke up.
probably one of 19 parents who are in the same.
Plus, you'll get a discount on your in the insurance.
Yeah, you have to take, you have to do.
You have to take it, right, I know that.
driver's test.
Yes, yes. And it's.
Just a little bit.
Oh. A little bit.
And spoiler alert, my presentation on May 15th is basically going to propose that we move driver's ed completely to the summer and after school, because it is just not cost effective in the schedule as is. The cost per student, when you factor in all the time that the teacher spends with so few students, is just astronomical compared to other classes. We wouldn't run AP physics classes with 6 or 7 kids in it, but we run driver's ed. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I absolutely would support doing driver's ed in the summer. I also would support doing driver's ed after school in the fall as well. So, I mean, it does, as Dr. Runge said, provide an opportunity for a lot of students who are some of our best and brightest, who fill their schedules with high level, high rigor courses. We offer them other courses in the summer as credit advancement. This would, kind of fall in that same vein. So if the teachers are ready and willing and able to do it.
That was my next question. Do we have teachers that want to do it in the summer?
Well, we do, because that's who brought it to our attention, was one of the driver's ed teachers, because he kind of took a little poll in the class and said, hey, we have an interest, so here it is. We have him, we have Mr. Cadill, we have Pete Wojtowicz, Mr. Cadill, Brad Wright, Joe Perkovich are all certified driver's ed instructors. And then last year, I believe, a gentleman from Homer Center came and picked up some of the slack as well, so that they could drive with that many kids.
How many would we need to hire for summer for 19?
Well, the way we do it is we can hire as many as they want, but we only give them so many kids. So they basically get 6 hours a student.
Okay.
Or 7 hours a student, I think it is, so that I have to look up the thing, so that at their per diem rate per hour. So each student would cost us roughly $525. Yeah.
So that's how you
calculated it.
There you go. So,
but taking a longer view at this, we have about 225 kids in each class that are needing driver's ed.
That's what I was going to ask. If we're going to the summer, you're just talking about then next fall not having any during the.
Well, originally, once upon a time, driver's ed was offered at the very end of the day in one class period, and then all the driving was done outside the school day.
I see.
And we're looking at a model like that, if we can make it work, which would reduce the cost.
Right.
And it would reduce the burden on the senior high schedule and other schedules, and could actually open up opportunities, all kinds of interesting opportunities across the district.
Right now, we're not serving 50% of our graduating class. And the trouble is if we don't have 19 kids this summer, there's 19 kids this fall that won't get a slot. And so we keep falling farther and farther behind with increased costs. So we need to get the costs under control, and we need to serve more kids, or we need to get out of the business.
I see, yeah.
Agreed.
Jared says we can afford it.
No.
No, we'd probably be operating outside the budget at this point, but there is.
For this summer.
For the summer, yeah. So that was, if you remember Jared's proposal, we're looking at a home $900,000 bite out of our fund balance. This would be, a little bit more of a bite, but, it's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is it's $10,000 is a small bite if we're going to provide this for.
Yeah.
But we can't charge the kids $500 each either.
No, and we used to charge families $200 to take part in driver's ed. So that's something we could look at moving forward too. Once we moved it into the schedule, it didn't make any.
But the free and reduced were reduced.
Yes.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Everybody still got charged a little.
Yes, sir. So.
But we can certainly look at bringing those fees back.
Fees kind of went away when it became part of the integrated in the full schedule, the regular day schedule. So if we go back to this, then we just go back to the way it was before.
I think the only way to preserve it is having fees charged to the families who can afford the fees, or at least partial.
And we still have a little work on our end to do to make this work the way we want it to work, but we hope to have that in place by May 15th so we can offer it to you, because like I said, it offers something we want to provide all of our kids. It's not something we want to take out, but at the same time, the cost per student for driver's ed is significantly higher than any of our other classes. And it's just something we have to, if we're going to be fiscally sound as well, we have to balance the book, so to speak. So but yeah, but it's definitely something we support, but at the same time, it's, it's a financial burden. Yes, sir.
Couldn't you also look at how much it's costing for families to go outside and then try to make, because the number that you just quoted, I think is a little bit, if not a lot lower than what the private schools are.
Is it?
Charging, yes.
I actually haven't looked.
What it was.
Yeah.
I can get you that information. It's a flyer that our insurance agent sent us, so it had all the information.
If you don't mind sharing it, that'd be great. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And this summer, those 19 students won't be charged
We don't currently charge the fee,
because
so.
we don't, right, okay.
I think
Sue,
we
are you
should.
recommending it?
Yeah, I think so. I think we need to.
Okay.
Tom, you agree?
We'll put it on the next
Um,
agenda.
I'm okay with making some charge, to offset the
Well,
cost.
not for this summer, but for future.
It's the
Yeah,
board.
I mean,
can pass
over
it.
half our kids don't qualify for hardly any charge. So, we could recoup some of that 10,000 and make Julia a little happier.
You want us to run some numbers and bring a proposal back?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay.
For what, for the fall?
Well, for the summer,
For
he's
summer.
saying, well, you can reinstate the fee anytime. There's nothing precluding you from that. And if you don't want them, that's why we have a board. You guys can debate it and discuss it.
I would my feeling is I'd rather see your proposal for the big program and not change horses in the middle of a stream for this summer. Is that a saying?
But we do want to do the summer program somehow or other.
Sure.
I think, at least I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So something to the next board meeting that you think you can
Yes, sir.
sell?
No, wait, I don't understand what you're saying.
He's saying,
I'm saying we want to, I would prefer to serve 19 students this summer.
Right.
Under some conditions, and I don't know what he's going to propose.
Oh.
Okay, and then he's going to
Let
come
them
up
do
with
the lead
something.
work and propose that either to charge, not charge.
Yeah. We'll look at what the options are. We'll bring it to you with some more accurate data and, you
And
guys
it's gotta
can
be
decide.
$10,000.
It would cost roughly $10,000. It shouldn't cost more than $10,000 to run all 19 students through. And last year, I think we budgeted for a group and we didn't, not all the students signed up or finished, so it didn't cost us quite what we anticipated. So, but I can have Jared run those numbers a little bit better for you.
I'm okay I'm okay developing the data to present to the board. To let the board debate it and then 5 votes and we're off one way or the other.
Okay. Okay, and thank you for that. Going through the last couple items, I will be quick because it is already 8 o'clock. We vowed that we weren't going to do this, but the work is the work, I guess. But
Sue never does it in less than 3 hours now.
We're following Sue.
So very, very briefly, I just wanted to share with you the biannual PAYS survey came out. I'll be sending all of you this data so you can peruse it at your leisure. I'll also be posting it on the website because I think it's important for our families to see as well with a little article about what this all means. Some of the highlights, we saw a lot of positives. Illicit drug use, specifically hard drugs, is almost non-existent in our school district, which is really good. And that means the heroin, crack, the really hard drugs. Marijuana use is actually not as bad as it is in other places. However, vaping is still way too high, especially at the junior high level. We saw some decreases in alcohol use and tobacco use has plummeted, which is great, but vaping is still very high. So
At the junior high too.
at the junior high especially, the junior high vaping is bad. About 20% of our students
Oh, that's so
reported
scary.
vaping. And here's the scary thing is I think it was 10%. I got to look at the number again, but 10% of them I think put when the question was, what do you vape? Do you vape THC? Do you vape just nicotine? One of the questions is, I don't know. And it's like 10% of the kids that vape have no idea what they're putting in their body, which is terrifying. So there's some concerning things there. Some of the other concerning data is still about mental health and suicide. We saw a decrease in some of the grade levels. 2 years ago, our seniors were off the charts with anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies. That dropped quite a bit, but our 8th grade and 10th grade are still high. So we still have a lot of work to do on that front.
It's not higher in the 8th and 10th grade? Is that what you're
overall,
saying?
it has remained almost the same. We've seen a little shift, whereas the 12th graders have dropped their suicidal ideations, but the other grade levels have risen a little bit. So it's roughly right about the same as about 15% of our students have had some sort of suicidal ideation at some point or another, which is horrifyingly high.
The presentation done by the young gentleman from the junior high with bullying, 8th grade, is that
It could be.
did you come to see where suicide and?
It could be, and I'll share this with the whole committee too, so you can look at it too, Jesse. And it'll actually draw some inferences and make some connections, but it's inconclusive. It's not going to say because of high bullying rates, there's a higher suicide tendency, but it could be, you know?
Think about those connections,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the advent of social media and, kids buried in their phones like this all the time, I think has some social consequences. And the students that are entering junior high now have had these in their hands since they were 4, and I think there's an element of that. So, but these are all speculations. So I'll share that with you. You can look at it. We'll share it online as well to the families. The good news is some of the prevention methods that we're using seem to have some impact, right? Specifically at the senior high school, things are, there's been some response to the mental health services. At other places, we still have a lot of work to do. That's, all the long and the short of it. So any questions about that? I mean.
Well, you also said that the bullying was similar to what he reported.
Correct. It was very similar. About 30% of our students indicate some sort of bullying takes place. 60% or so say no. But the good news is that a lot of them report that it's not frequent and ongoing, that it's more rare.
Right.
But school is still the number one place where it happens. Online is second, and then in the community is a distant third. So we still have some work to do there as well. I mean, our anti-bullying or pro-social and social emotional learning is having some impact with some of it, but I think we need to take a good long hard look at some of our practices in response to these bullying things. Is our consequence, punishment, is our consequence restorative and educating? Are we educating bullies? Are we educating the victims? Are we taking steps to really teach the kids why what they're doing is not okay?
Well, I think he also, it's the student perception that the punishment isn't severe enough, or maybe, and I'm using punishment, and I know that that's not the right word, but I'm paraphrasing what he said. It's not maybe as immediate. And, to me, of course, when I heard that, what do I think about? Dean of students.
Well, we have a dean of students at the junior high.
Full-time.
Half-time.
No, he's
half-time.
Paul, right?
Paul was 3 periods.
Wait.
3 periods,
Only
so
3 periods.
a third of the time.
Is it possible that 80% of the bullying is done by 10% of the bullies?
It's very possible. And I don't.
That the majority of the bullying is done by a very few number of kids. I mean, that was certainly the way it was when I was in class.
It could, and I think what Lane.
A long time ago.
Lane's insight about some students not really understanding the definition of bullying. I think there's something to that too. Like, I think they perceive any negative social interaction as bullying.
Yeah.
Which is, I think may skew some of the data a little bit, but it's still something we have to work on, and that's why this is such a valuable tool. I'm glad we participate every couple of years, because it gives us such usable data that we can really steer some of our efforts at, and now we know where we have to focus for the next 2 years. So I'll share that with you all here in the next day or two, and so you can look at it, and then we'll have more conversations down the road. A real quick update: River Valley School District has reached out to us and asked us to enter into an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with that district, so we can send our students to their programming, specifically at the STEAM Academy. So I'm working with Jeff Geezy, I've talked to Mr. Stroth, and we're working with Ron Repack on what that would look like, whether or not it's legal, whether or not it's necessary. The law says that if a student wants to participate in a state-approved SIP-coded program, that we have to find that for them, right? So we have an agreement with ICTC that says that, and we're invested, we're part owners of ICTC. It would be foolish for us to take kids that could have seats at ICTC and send them to another school, with no financial engagement there. So we're looking through those things. We're looking at what they're calling programs of study, which are elective courses that may have some sort of industry certification but aren't approved state zip codes. Mr. Repack and I have been requested some information from River Valley. He's now looking at that and working with the state on whether or not this is a positive move for the district or a negative move for the district. So there's more to come. I just want to let you know that it's on our radar. We are working on it, and we'll be bringing a much more sound recommendation to you.
But if a student can't get into a program with the ICTC and River Valley has one,
we automatically
we're
legally
already
obligated.
And if they have a program that we don't have at the ICTC, we're already obligated without an MOU.
State approved zip codes, yes.
Correct. Correct. So if a kid just wants to go down there because he wants to go down there.
Because he wants to go to.
But the ICTC
gaming,
has it, then he goes up to the ICTC.
Correct. So if they want cyber security right now, cyber security is the River Valley name for the computer science program. It's the same zip code of River Valley as it is at the ICTC. So we're obligated. It would be foolish for us to send someone to River Valley when we have the same program at ICTC.
I'll bet you have a vested interest.
A vested interest, exactly.
Now, Tom,
I don't understand why we have an MOU.
Tom,
It doesn't change the ground.
The MOU, I think, is number one, inappropriate. It could ask us to do something or agree to something that would be anti-contractual with the ICTC. And I suspect, and this is my opinion, but I suspect that what River Valley is looking for is validation of their program. And if we sign an MOU with them, then we are essentially saying we support your program and we support your efforts. And that's not necessarily the way I feel it should be, particularly if it takes away from what happens up on the hill.
And to that end, if these programs of study are determined to be electives, it may be against our own collective bargaining agreement with our own teachers to send students to River Valley. So there's a lot of legal things that we have to work through here to make sure that we're not, stepping in a hole, but also there might be an opportunity. So we're working with Ron Repack to make sure we vet all these out. We'll bring it back at some point to say, hey, this is what we recommend and this is why, and then we can discuss it and decide as a board.
My one question would be, were other superintendents and districts within the ICTC ring, were they approached also?
I know that Homer Center was, and they voted it down pretty resoundingly.
Okay, thank you.
So.
And they still took one of their students.
And they still took one of their students. The other thing is, and I will mention this briefly, and I hate to do this, but they also, River Valley has recently indicated they plan to pull out of the ICTC. So there's an element there. The other thing is they just recently announced that they are partnering with 21st Century Learning Academy, a cyber school, an online cyber school, which we need to find out what the intentions are there. Because if their intentions are simply to help a cyber school provide CTC programming, then God bless them, right? If their intention is to use that as a way to get around enrollment laws here and enroll ISD students in cyber school to get them in there, well then obviously that presents a different situation for us. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure that this is a
They
good
must have
thing.
more money than we do.
That is all though I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything for the good of the committee?
Do we have any input from on the childcare? On the childcare side, any report?
Childcare at the high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, the meeting is next Tuesday at the junior high school. It's no longer at the senior high school. Or is it Wednesday? It's either Tuesday or Wednesday next week to talk about that. We met with Sarah Jort, Justin and Wade and I to talk about the vision for this, and she seemed pretty confident that she could meet the moment and make a lot of those things happen. So whether we get articulation agreements, we also have a meeting with St. Francis on Thursday about articulation credits through them. Obviously, we want IUP first. But if IUP and St. Francis want to give our students articulated credits, why would we say no? Right?
That's May 15th, May
One more
15th
question.
is
One more.
that.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned, 7:53. Thank you, everyone.
One more question.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
I'm leaving May the 20th. And I won't be back till June the 8th.